Liz, I'll turn to you now. The new book, Devil's Bargain, suggesting Steve Bannon is the person who got Donald Trump elected. There's been reports now that President Trump didn't like that Bannon was getting the credit. Do you think it was a factor in his ouster here?
I don't think so. I think, there's rumors like that all the time, but clearly Bannon was someone that Trump could work very well together and got the campaign on track, along with Kellyanne Conway, and were very successful in doing so. I think the major thing that led to his ousting was not only John Kelly coming in and trying to rein in the White House and have a tighter ship there, but it was also his comments on North Korea. You cannot make comments that undermines the president's and the entire defense apparatus's stance on North Korea, bringing fire and fury, and then say there's actually no military solution here. That really undermined the foreign policy, and I think that's what ultimately led to this decision and him leaving.
Niger, is this the team that exists right now, John Kelly et al., is this the team that can bring tax reform across the finish line, that can change health care as we know it and put it on firmer footing, that can even just get a budget? I mean, at the end of the day, we've got some really important deadlines in front of us.
And this is where, some of the movement that General Kelly has executed, I think, is healthy, because obviously at this point in time, this is not election season, it's leading season and getting legislation passed and getting some victories on the board. So I think in that sense, these moves that are being made could be very, very helpful. I hope our Republican friends in the House and the Senate are going to be a little bit more cooperative now than they have been, chirping at the president on Charlottesville, which I think, quite frankly, has been a little nonsensical.
I want to stay with this theme for just a second to you, Jessica, which is that, you brought up Congress before and how they need to take the ball now and move it across the finish line, but are they up to the task? It seems to me, I don't know if they were kowtowing to Trump or not, but they haven't been able to bring themselves together to get anything done at all. Can we trust them with these basic missions? Raise the debt ceiling, get a budget together, the things that have to be done for the country to move forward.
I'm not sure. I think the Republicans have been a disappointment, not only to those of us on the left, but also to their own party. You see that in the approval ratings and the scathing criticisms of Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. My point about the kowtowing to President Trump is that I believe that they advanced certain pieces of legislation, health care, for instance, something that he threw his weight behind when there were massive concerns from people on the ground there. And I understand John McCain was a shock vote against it, but there were people throughout the process saying, hey there, wait a minute, let's talk about what's going on with Medicaid. Let's talk about pre-existing conditions. And if they listen to their members as opposed to the president, I think they have a much higher likelihood of getting something that can pass. They have the numbers, but they need to also have a more bipartisan. But they have them if they can. I mean, nothing's going to make Rand Paul and Susan Collins probably happy.
Okay. But let's get Liz in here for a last word on this, because I look at this and one of the previous guests said, hey, the markets are higher because they think everything's calming down. To me, it looks like everything's erupting. Which is correct?
I think there's still hope in the markets that when Congress comes back from August recess, that they can get their act together and follow through on tax reform, because they think that's a much easier goal to get accomplished than health care. And I agree. I think the Republicans, especially in the Senate, have been a complete disappointment in not following through on their promises to their voters. I mean, take Trump out of it. It has nothing to do with Trump. It has everything to do with what they've promised for the last 7 or 8 years to repeal Obamacare, and they weren't able to do it. But I think the markets are still optimistic in that tax reform hasn't failed yet. There's still a chance.
Just give it a few more minutes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not too optimistic either, but I think there still is some optimism there for the market.
Well, we got a long way to go, as Jessica says. There's time yet to continue to debate this. And I think we're waiting for some breaking news here. We have a statement from the press secretary. Listen to this. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and Steve Bannon have mutually agreed today that this would be Steve's last day. We are grateful for his service and wish him the best. That sounds like a resignation to me. We were debating earlier in the show whether it would be a resignation or whether he would be pushed. Niger, what do you make of the statement?
It sounds positive, and again, I'll say what I said before, that I hope that this is a lateral move, that that Mr. Bannon is going to still be on the team because, again, practically speaking, when you have a president that is under siege from some very hard left-wing elements, and I do not include Jessica in that. We obviously disagree on Charlottesville.
I'm glad that I haven't quite gone alt-left to you at this point.
No, you haven't gone alt-left just yet. But you do have some folk out there that are after the president, and they're not going to be finished with him. He can fire Bannon, Gorka, whoever he wants. They will continue to go after him. And when you have that atmosphere, you've got to have some folk in the White House that have the will to fight and have the political will. You know, I would love Alan West to get into the White House in some way, shape, or form. But he needs some real warriors out there that are willing to fight the battle. And, of course, some folk that can be reasonable and work with Congress and get legislation passed and then signed on the president's desk so he can sign it and get some victories.
Well, Liz, no easy thing there. You're just seeing, we're showing that statement yet again. Look, Bannon a firebrand, absolutely no doubt about it. This is a fella who published the Clinton Cash book, founder of Breitbart, a guy with, you know, really well known with the base. Do you think the base won't like this? Will there be a reaction among people who just love Trump and want to support him any way they can?
I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch, and I think a lot of Trump's base will initially not like this move, and it'll all depend on how Bannon reacts, if this truly was an amicable split, and if he goes out to war. Like we've heard reports that it's going to be barbarian Bannon coming out and supporting the president from outside. So if he does that, I think his base will easily forgive Trump for dismissing him and say, hey, he's more effective on the outside. But we'll have to wait to see what Bannon actually does after he leaves the White House.
Jessica, I know one group that's going to be super happy about this, and this is AT&T and Time Warner, because Bannon did not like that merger, and he talked about it a lot. There are lots of ancillary things at the margins that will get impacted by this, too. What else?
Oh, well, I mean, I think the national conscience, which might not be an ancillary item, but I think that will be positively affected.
You say people might disagree.
No, well, yeah, I think 32% might disagree with me, but I think the rest of us are pretty uniform here. No, I think certainly business, it'll be interesting to see what the markets do over the next few days with this news, and kind of the more stability that a Gary Cohn will bring to that, at least seemingly. I know a lot of people were talking about when there were rumors that Gary Cohn might leave, that's why the market started fluctuating there, because investors are calmer about him, and it might be more boring, it might be less firebrand.
Well, firebrand, I think you've got that right.
Definitely,
and,
but I do wonder, because President Trump doesn't have an issue with calling people outside the White House to get advice. So I wonder how much he's actually going to continue talking to Steve Bannon and how much he'll be informing him anyway about what's going on there, whether he's sitting. He
talks to a lot of people on the telephone, that's for darn sure.
He loves that phone.
We're gonna have to leave it there, guys. Absolutely great job. Great panel. Thank you so much.